What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back to the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube for the latest episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones, and coming up on today's episode, we'll recap day 2 of the 2023 NFL Draft. We'll hear from head coach Sean Payton and general manager George Paton as they take a look at the Broncos' 3 picks. All that and more coming up. It was an exciting start to the draft here at the Denver Broncos team headquarters on Friday. The Broncos' first move of the weekend came in the second round when Denver traded up to select Oklahoma wide receiver Marvin Mims Jr. He was the final pick of the second round. And we heard from head coach Sean Payton and general manager George Paton following the draft on Friday, and they both discussed what they liked about him.
You know, his traits, he's got return skills, character makeup, smart. He's someone that can play at Z, can play at X. He brings an element of speed you can feel on tape. I think like that vision around the room was there was no gray area relative to what we saw.
Toughness, in the run game for a guy who's not that big, and his transition after the catch on those, the screens, and we just feel he's for his size, he's really tough. And so we saw it both years, but yeah, you get better, obviously in your third year.
In the trade, the Broncos sent their 68th and 138th overall picks to the Detroit Lions in exchange for that 63rd and the 183rd overall pick in the draft. The Broncos then went on to draft a linebacker, Drew Sanders, out of Arkansas with the 67th overall pick, and Coach Payton discussed how he'll fit in here in Denver.
Honestly, Sanders' vision might be one in which varied around the league, because he's a transfer from Alabama. He's played some outside backer. He's played some inside linebacker. He had a ton of pressure production last year. Our vision for him is an inside linebacker, 4-core special teams player who can go and, stem down to the outside. We saw so many good traits with him and such good production.
We all thought the night was over after that, but general manager George Paton and company surprised us all by trading back into the third round. Denver selected Iowa defensive back Riley Moss with the 83rd overall pick.
He was one of those target players. We didn't have many picks. This year we have 5. Obviously, we wanted quality, and we feel like he's a quality player, and he's going to help us. And so yeah, you don't love giving picks up in the future, but we had 2 in the third. And so I think we all feel really good about it, feel great about it for everything Sean said. And no, we had him in here on a visit, loved the makeup. He aced the offseason, the Senior Bowl, the Combine. Then we brought him in on a visit. The coaches met with him. They Zoomed. I mean, we spent a lot of time with this player. And so we feel really good about the trade.
We picked and tugged and hosed down and looked at every tape and visited with. He was in on the trip, all the numbers, prototype, loved the makeup. We spent as much time on this player because this was one of these players that we felt like in the very beginning was going to be one of these decisions, and sure enough, he was.
Denver traded their 108th overall pick and a 2024 third-round pick to Seattle in exchange for that selection. And general manager George Paton discussed both of the trades of the night and the value that they saw in it.
All week, we kind of had some players that we had targeted. If they fell close enough to us, we'd go get. And that was the case with Mims and Sanders. And we just, Mims and Riley Moss. We just didn't want to lose those players. And so we didn't lose any picks this year. We still stayed with our 5, and we just felt they were, really good value for where we took them, and that's why we moved up and got them.
Now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio is fellow team reporter Phil Milani. Phil, an exciting night here at the team headquarters. I know Sean Payton has a history of trading up in the draft, and tonight was no different.
Yeah, exactly. A quiet first round for the Broncos, and then the fireworks started here on Friday, and they got wheeling and dealing.
They definitely did. I mean, both Sean and George joked in their press conference that, George is a saver, Sean's a spender, but, they complement each other well.
That tends to happen because coaches, they want to win right now. They see the guy and they're like, I want to coach this guy,
100%.
And then the GMs, they tend to be like, hey, I got a vision for this team. We got to think about next year too. But that sounds like a good balance to have there, those two guys, especially hearing from them after the night was through.
Definitely. Yeah, Phil, what did you think about the trades?
Good. I mean, if you identify a guy that you want and you feel like you're waiting and they start slide in, and then you're like, we got to go up and get them. And then if you feel strong about it, I thought that they gave a fair value there. So yeah, I mean, if you like the guy, and it sounds like they really liked Marvin Mims, hey, go up and get him. And if it works out and the guy's a good player, a few years from now, you'll never remember, oh yeah, they moved up to get him, right? What'd they give up? You don't think about that stuff.
Right.
All you know is that Marvin Mims is a great football player.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at the draft kind of overall, Phil, one thing that I noticed about Coach Payton's press conference was he talked about the versatility of each of the guys drafted tonight. Clearly, they went in with a vision and a mindset of the type of player that they were going to get.
Yeah, they had a vision for what they wanted.
Right.
And, a couple of the guys that they picked, Drew Sanders, the linebacker out of Arkansas, played the first couple of years at Alabama, then went to Arkansas. There was some thought, okay, maybe this guy's going to be an edge player. Maybe this guy's going to be a middle kind of guy.
Right.
He can play both, but they said, okay, when he comes in here, he's going to be an inside guy for the Broncos. So it kind of erased some of the thoughts about maybe having him move to edge. I thought that was interesting that he came out and said that.
Yeah.
And then same with Riley Moss, the cornerback out of Iowa. He's a speedster, bigger guy. He played cornerback there at Iowa, but there was some talk maybe that he could move to safety and play safety there. Sean Payton said, no, we want him to play cornerback for the Broncos. So guys that have that versatility if needed, but also the Broncos had a vision for what they want to see out of these guys. Even Marvin Mims, I mean, you talk about the big play, the explosiveness from him. I thought that Sean Payton had a great way of describing that. He said, some guys, it looks like they're driving and it's Monday through Friday. There's traffic. This guy, he's driving and it's the weekend and he's always open. I like that. That was a great line. Yep. I never heard an analogy like that before, so that was good. But he could play a returner too. And, the Broncos brought in two very good special teams coaches to come in here. And they said, look, we feel like we've got the coaches that are going to get this guy to the next level here in terms of his return game. So guys that have versatility, but also the Broncos have a clear vision for what they want out of these players.
Definitely. And kind of going along with that too, George talked about the makeup of these guys. Who they are as players, but also who they are off the field too, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, and you heard a little bit of that during the free agency, and he brought that up too. He was like, look, when Sean Payton first came to Denver, the first time those two talked about what kind of players they want to bring in here, they talked about the character and the mental makeup. And, I think Sean Payton said, hey, the reason that you miss on a guy is I think George said this, that it's the mental makeup part of it. How much does this guy love football? What's his character like? What's he willing to do for his teammates? Those kind of things that can separate guys on draft night. And it's not the stuff that pops up on film because they do the film study. They know the film study, backwards and forwards. But the mental part of it, what kind of character are we adding to the locker room? Sometimes you find good football players that their film doesn't necessarily pop, but once you put them in a game situation and they're facing some adversity, that's when they're going to make the play. Right. Some of that is a character, and that's a lot harder to scout, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Phil, I know we talked to each of the draft picks on a conference call today. Was there anything that stood out to you on those conference calls about any of the guys?
Yeah, who really stood out was Riley Moss. I thought that he sounded like just a mature kid. Those Iowa guys, they're just a little bit different. Like when you talk to Josie Jewell, like he's just very reserved, and just like kind of level-headed.
Humble.
And yeah, exactly, humble. And I just liked that Riley Moss. I mean, he was going to go to North Dakota State coming out of high school. He was not a highly recruited player. I think he was just like a 2-star kind of player. Had some interest in Iowa. He decided to pay tuition his freshman year, went out there and played, and then that winter after the season earned a scholarship. So, he sounded like that. Yeah. All of them really sounded like they had that kind of character, where they were mature guys, that they were going to come in here ready to work, ready to learn from these guys, especially the two defenders, mentioning, hey, that was a good defense last year. Yeah. We got a lot to learn, and there's some talent there that we hopefully we can soak everything up with from those guys. So I liked hearing from those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Phil, looking ahead to the rest of the draft here on Saturday, Denver has just 2 picks remaining, both in the 6th round, number 183 overall and then 195. What other positions do you think the Broncos might target?
Gosh, really, probably just whoever's best available on their board. I think that at that position, in the draft, you're just hoping that you can find somebody that, hey, you take a chance on them, and boom, if they can hit, then you got a player here. I think that's the kind of player you're hoping to find in the 6th round.
Yep.
Just in terms of positions, I can see the Broncos trying to address maybe an offensive lineman, maybe an interior defensive line kind of guy, and I think you're hoping to have a guy who you could see that he's an ascending player type of thing, where you had some weight on and boom, then they're a great player. Hey, let's get him in with our coaches, and then we feel like they got the potential. I mean, that's probably the big word that you're hoping you can find a guy like that. But there's still talent out there, Sid, and even last year you look, a guy like Matt Henningsen, he's still available late on day 3, and he played as a rookie, especially early in the year. So
that's true.
There's going to be guys out there that the Broncos can still find. It might not sound really exciting. Hey, all you have is 2 6th-rounders left, but this is why these guys do their homework. I mean, they spend so much time in the draft room, just really studying the tape, going over it over and over and over. This is why you do it, because come 6th round, there's still talent there that you can find a hidden gem, a sleeper. Those are the words said. And we'll see what the Broncos do. But I could see them going a lineman here or there, but ultimately a best available player, I think. So
yeah, I agree. An exciting first day for the Broncos.
Got some guys that feels like they can come in here and contribute. And hearing from Sean Payton and George Payton, they seem excited about what they got. Yeah. But I liked what Sean said. Everybody feels like they got their guy.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody just had a press conference that was sort of like that. Hey, we got our guy. We feel good about the players we picked. We really won't know, Sid, until they come in here, they put those pads on, they get to practice, they get in the meeting rooms. Even a guy like Moss that they did so much homework on, they had him in here for top 30. They still haven't spent that much time with them, So until they're here, until they're working, until you see them, even later on when the big lights are on and you're playing in prime time, until you see them perform there, you won't really know. So we'll judge this draft class in a few years, but right now, at least after this night, it feels like the Broncos got some guys.
Yep. Well, we'll see what gems they find on Saturday.
Yeah. Thanks, Sid.
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate your time. Well, that'll do it for tonight's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to meet me right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube tomorrow for another episode covering the NFL Draft. I'll see you all then.